Hello, my beautiful people. Welcome to Docentes DigitalesTV, the most complete spoken English course on YouTube. This is the place where you'll learn English the natural way, just by listening, understanding, and speaking. No stress, no boring grammar drills, just real stories and real language. Today's story is called The Project That Almost Cost Me My Career. Let's begin. My name is David. I'm a civil engineer, and for years, I dedicated myself to doing things the right way. Honest work, careful planning, and making sure no detail was overlooked. But all it took was one project, one situation, to bring me face to face with the possibility of losing everything I had worked for. The story begins in the spring of 2022. I had recently transferred to a new engineering firm that specialized in large urban development projects. The company had a strong reputation, and I was excited to be part of something big. On my third week there, the director called me into his office and handed me a file. "David," he said, "we're taking over a stalled project from another firm. It's behind schedule, over budget, and the city is furious. We need someone who can clean up the mess." I opened the file. Blueprints, notes, soil tests. It was a high-rise parking structure downtown. I quickly noticed some of the numbers didn't add up. The load calculations were inconsistent. The foundation design had been revised 3 times. Worst of all, there were no updated site inspections. This project was already a disaster. Still, I nodded. "I'll do it." My first visit to the site confirmed my fears. Workers stood idle. The materials had been delivered in excess, just sitting and aging under the sun. The structural columns were already up to the 3rd level, but I immediately noticed they were slightly out of alignment, just a few centimeters, but enough to raise red flags. I asked for the latest inspection reports. The site manager shrugged. "We haven't had an inspector in 2 months. The previous engineer said it was fine." I took a deep breath. The next few days were a blur of measurements, calculations, and conversations with architects, surveyors, and city planners. I spent most nights in my apartment, staring at spreadsheets and CAD models. And the more I dug, the more I realized just how unstable this project had become. There was one particular issue that haunted me. A critical joint at the southern end of the structure, where 2 major support beams intersected. The plans showed one configuration, but the photos from the site showed something else. I visited the location again, climbed the scaffold myself, and saw it with my own eyes. Someone had altered the placement to save time. The modification weakened the load distribution in that entire section. I reported it immediately. And then the storm began. My supervisor called me. "David, the city is furious. They think we're delaying the project intentionally. Why didn't you bring this up sooner?" "I only discovered it 2 days ago," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. He sighed. "Well, now the client wants an emergency review. You're presenting tomorrow." I barely slept that night. I prepared diagrams, printed photos, and rehearsed my explanation in front of a mirror. The next morning, I stood in front of the city committee. Contractors, politicians, city engineers, all staring at me, expecting answers. I took a breath. "The current configuration of the southern joint is unsafe," I began. "It deviates from the approved plans and compromises the structure's long-term stability. If left uncorrected, this could result in partial collapse." There was a moment of silence, then questions, dozens of them. Some people were supportive, others were clearly angry. One councilman pointed at me and said, "Are you saying this entire delay is your fault?" I stood still. "No, sir. I'm saying I caught a problem before it became a tragedy." That phrase seemed to resonate. After the meeting, my supervisor pulled me aside. "David, You embarrassed the company today. I told the truth, I said quietly. We'll see if that matters. For the next 3 weeks, I was under review. I wasn't fired, but I was no longer invited to planning meetings. My name was removed from the email chains. People avoided eye contact. I started to question everything. Did I overreact? Should I have kept quiet? One afternoon, I got a message from the city engineer, the same woman who had reviewed my warning. She invited me to a site walk. When I arrived, she smiled and said, "David, I wanted to see for myself. You were right." She pointed to the southern joint, now under reconstruction. "You might have just saved lives." That night, I received a formal letter from the city, thanking me for my professionalism and recommending me for future municipal projects. And the following week, my company quietly reinstated me to my position, without apology, without fanfare. But that didn't matter, because I knew I had done the right thing. That project almost cost me my career, not because of my mistake, but because I dared to speak up. In engineering, it's not just concrete and steel that matter. It's integrity. And sometimes, it's the invisible things, your courage, your principles, that hold everything together. Now it's time for the test. Remember, answer each question out loud. That's how you train your brain and your mouth to work together in English. Let's begin. What type of project was David assigned to manage? David was assigned to a stalled urban parking structure project. What issues did David find in the early blueprints and calculations? He found inconsistent load calculations, revised foundation designs, and no recent site inspections. What structural problem did David discover on site? He discovered a critical joint was altered to save time, weakening the structure. Why did the site manager say inspections hadn't happened recently? He said the previous engineer had claimed everything was fine, so no inspectors were called. How did David react after discovering the unsafe beam joint? He reported the issue immediately to his superiors. How did his supervisor respond to his report? His supervisor was upset and said the city was angry, blaming David for delays. What phrase did David use during the city meeting that had a strong impact? He said, "I caught a problem before it became a tragedy." What happened to David after the presentation? He was placed under review, excluded from meetings, and isolated by his colleagues. Who confirmed that David was right about the structural issue? The city engineer confirmed it and thanked him for speaking up. What did David learn from this experience? He learned that in engineering, integrity is as important as technical skill. Now let's review some useful vocabulary from this story with examples. Stalled. When something stops progressing or functioning. Example. The construction project stalled due to funding issues. Alignment. The proper positioning of parts so they fit together correctly. Example. The engineer checked the alignment of the bridge beams before pouring concrete. Deviation. A difference or departure from the standard example. Any deviation from the blueprint must be approved by the project manager. Scaffold. A temporary structure used by workers to access high areas. Example. The painter climbed the scaffold to reach the top floor. Compromise. To weaken or put something at risk. Example: removing the central pillar could compromise the entire structure. Fan: to spread or circulate something. In this case, metaphorically used. Example: there was no fanfare when he was reinstated, meaning no celebration or announcement. Reinstated: given back your previous position after being removed. Example: after the investigation, the suspended manager was reinstated. Blueprint: a detailed design plan used for construction. Example: the builders followed the blueprint exactly to avoid mistakes. Site walk: a visit to a construction site to inspect progress or issues. Example: the architect did a site walk every Friday to monitor the build. Municipal: relating to a city or town's government or infrastructure. Example: the municipal board approved funding for the new park. Thanks so much for watching and listening to this full episode. If you've made it this far, you're seriously improving your English. Please remember to subscribe to Docentes DigitalesTV, like this video, and share it with your friends so they too can learn English the natural way. See you in the next video.